Welcome here to a very special wake-up call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, the first ever video show of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. So very interesting, new territory for myself, new territory for this Syracuse Orange team, which is what I'm here to talk about today. The Syracuse Orange advancing to the Final Four, and for James Sutherland, Brandon Trish, CJ Fair, Michael Carter-Williams, Trevor Cooney, Jeremy Grant, Rakeem Christmas, Bai Kita, and everybody else. This is the first time that any of these guys have achieved their place in the Final Four. And the reason why I mention that is because looking back on the career of some of these players, James Sutherland, Brandon Trish, when you look back at what happened in 2010, these guys look like they were ripe for getting to the Final Four. And Arinze Onuaku, their center, goes down. One of the best field goal percentages in the country, just under 70%, around 67% of the time he was making his shots. And of course, he was shooting from in close, but still very efficient big man, got better on his free throws at times, was grabbing rebounds. And then he goes out, and Syracuse loses to a Butler team that looks to condense the score. And even though they stopped a guy like Matt Howard inside for Butler, they didn't have answers for the other forwards, Gordon Hayward and Willie Veasley. So Syracuse loses there. Butler goes on to the national championship and loses that national championship to Duke. But Syracuse not getting into the Elite Eight, not getting into the Final Four. Then in 2012, Syracuse is a number one seed once again, and they have an opportunity to get to the Final Four. But Fab Melo, who was suspended earlier on in the season, another center, was taken out right before the first game that Syracuse played in the NCAA tournament. One of those things where, you question, why wait? Why wait to tell a team that? Are you just trying to bring a team down? Is that showing favoritism toward other schools? Is it showing any lack of respect for Syracuse or personal attack on Syracuse? Those are questions that have been brought up when you look at the NCAA and their decision to say something about Fab Melo not being eligible right before, instead of letting Syracuse know that in advance and giving them time to prepare. And maybe behind the scenes they did, but as far as what came out in the media, Syracuse not knowing that Fab Melo was going to be out until right before their time in the NCAA tournament. But they had a run that I think very few people thought that they would achieve. I could personally say, covering Syracuse and growing up at Syracuse, New York, and knowing the teams over the years, I did not think that was a team that was going to get to the Elite Eight and right at the doorstep of the Final Four. But it finally caught up with them, not having Fab Melo's 3 blocks a game, not having his rebounds, not having his points. The fact that this is a guy who is giving you around 10 points a game, getting you 7-8 rebounds a game, and you don't have that. You don't have your best blocker, and not just your best blocker, but a guy who can alter shots, a guy who keeps people out of the paint in general. You see Fab Melo go up against some players that would change their game because almost it looked like they were afraid to go inside on the 7-footer. And so he definitely had an impact on Syracuse's defense and had an impact on the offense because of his defensive play, altering shots, stopping shots, blocking shots, getting defensive rebounds would start Syracuse in transition, which, as you know, over the years, in the here and now for Syracuse, especially in the 21st century, that's the type of team that they want to be, is getting out in transition and getting easy early buckets that help them get some spacing early on in the game and then throughout the game to continue to turn it on and outrun the teams that they're playing against. So when Fab Melo's taken out, the mentality is that this team is going to have some trouble, but they get all the way to Ohio State, but they go up against Jared Sullinger, who had a good night, was strong inside, and really didn't have anybody there. Rakeem Christmas in his freshman season, getting more minutes, had some good moments, but still struggled, and being youthful and coming in at that time, Rakeem Christmas, just, even though he did some good things, he didn't put it all together. And Bai Kita, this is a guy who last season you're talking about someone who still wasn't good at catching the ball, wasn't good on offense, wasn't trusted on offense, wasn't fed the ball on offense, and so between the two guys, they really couldn't make up for Fab Melo. They did a good job, a superb job throughout the tournament up until the Elite Eight, but when you see a team like Ohio State with a center presence like Jared Sullinger, this is what you see as the games get closer and closer to the national championship, is that the teams that are still around have an inside presence. And in the case of Jared Sullinger, it stopped Syracuse. So this season, Syracuse finds out in the middle of the season that James Sutherland is going to be out. So now you're looking at Arinze in 2010, Fab in 2012. Then in the 2012-2013 campaign, now you have to play without James Sutherland for an off-the-court issue. So you're wondering, are you going to get him back? They lose him for 6 games, but the team goes 4-2, really with, each guy stepping up. But, I have to name Jeremy Grant, the freshman forward for Syracuse, who really stepped up. Went from playing between Providence and South Florida. He had a combined 10 minutes on the floor. He goes from that to playing no less than 27 minutes in each of the 6 games that James Sutherland's out, plays 40 minutes in 2 of those games, and really showed up, his best game being at home in the Dome against Notre Dame, playing against his brother Jarian, and having family in the stands. And, obviously if you're a Syracuse fan and you saw the way that Jeremy played there, you'd want him to play in front of his family all the time and against one of his siblings as much as possible. Jeremy Grant really helped the team get going, and keep themselves on a positive note to continue to be strong, continue to be productive, continue to work hard in the absence of James Sutherland, who was consistently inconsistent when he went out. People look at the fact, well, he made 9 threes against Arkansas without his points, 27 points off threes, 35 overall. Syracuse would have never won. And you're absolutely right. But at the same time, 35 points becomes 8 points, a couple rebounds, 1 here and there, not block shots, not getting steals. And so James Sutherland was one of those guys that you knew he had the potential to shoot. And as Lazara Sims told me from coaching him, the former player and former assistant coach for Syracuse, it's now with Binghamton University Bearcats team, Lazara Sims told me that, when James Sutherland came in, he was always a pure shooter. It's something that they knew he could do. He could always shoot the ball. And it's becoming more than that. So James comes back. His appeal is heard and upheld. He's given the opportunity to come back onto the court. And when he comes back onto the court, the team gets a couple wins, but then they struggle down the stretch, losing 4 out of 5 in the regular season. And that really, it affects the team. It affects the psyche. And I could say from being in the locker room that the psyche was definitely different from this team. Brandon Trish, I would say above everybody, just really looked depressed, down, out of it. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, because it always rings true no matter what team it is. When your mentality is gone, when it's on the negative side, there's really not a lot of hope for you to win a game, because you could be physically strong, you could be physically fit, you can have endurance, you can run fast, you could jump high. You can know your playbook. You can know your teammates. You could be a good passer. You could be a good shooter. You could be great on defense and have good hands and God-given ability. But if mentally you take yourself out of the game, then your defender really doesn't have to do much of anything to stop you, because you've already stopped yourself. And with 35,012 fans, the biggest on-campus crowd for an NCAA men's basketball game ever at the Carrier Dome, Syracuse goes down. I see them fall in that game inside the Carrier Dome. And that game against the Georgetown Hoyas, you look at the fact you're setting a record, but you're losing. And then on top of that, you're losing to your arch rival of 83 years up to this point, and 33 years in the Big East as you're closing out your play in the Big East, because you'll be joining the ACC soon. So all of that on top of these guys, to lose that game, it really sent them in a downward spiral. They go on the road, lose to the Marquette Golden Eagles, come home, lose to the Louisville Cardinals, and then they beat DePaul. But DePaul had the worst record in the entire conference of the Big East. Out of 15 teams, they were down at number 15. So, it's a win, but at the same time, it's not really a quality win. It's not a win that's going to turn them around. And then they go on the road, and I was in Washington, D.C., in the nation's capital for this game, to see them lose 61-39 in the Verizon Center, 39 points in 40 minutes, not even as many points as there are minutes in a game. The team was out of it. C.J. Fair had some moves, but, you look at James Sutherland was 0 for 8. And, the team really just couldn't come through. There wasn't a lot of positives to say about it. Offensively, Georgetown showed that they have offense, and I think they've done that against other teams. And at the same time, Syracuse's offense was stagnant and wasn't there, forcing shots, really not moving the ball around, and defensively just not getting there. I mean, this team just looked completely out of it, disheveled, down, broken. But at the end of the game, players told me, listen, we're coming back around. We're going to turn this around. Jeremy Grant had stated that. Michael Carter-Williams being willing to do what he had to do. Trevor Cooney stating the fact that the team was going to get better going into the Big East tournament. And then they had a banquet. And at that banquet, Etan Thomas, an alum of Syracuse who spent a lot of time in the NBA, he has a conversation with Syracuse. And I spoke with Dr. Renee Baumgartner, the Deputy Director of Athletics and Chief of Staff, along with Herman Frazier, and she had stated to me and to a few other people in the media that before the Big East tournament, she said, listen, Etan Thomas came in, he talked to the players, and she said, I can't begin to describe to you the atmosphere, but we could all feel it in the room, not just the players. And she said, this is a different team. You are going to see a different team in the Big East tournament. And that's exactly what was seen. Going down to New York City, being at Madison Square Garden for my first ever Big East tournament and having it be the last was something special. And then seeing the run that Syracuse had made it even more special to be there because a team like Syracuse, to lose 4 out of 5, and going back to James Sutherland, just, Jim Boeheim said it, it takes a while to work somebody else back in. I mean, you look at the talent of James Sutherland, but you take somebody out of the locker room. He couldn't go on the road games at all. He could sit on the bench when you're playing the other games. He's not out there with you in the games. I mean, you can't simulate a game in practice. You can't simulate leadership when you're not on the floor. And so the team loses 4 out of 5. And some of it has to do with James Sutherland and trying to work him back into the mix. And then you head into the Big East tournament, and they play the Seton Hall Pirates, take them down. Seton Hall shooting better than 60% from beyond the arc at times, shooting better than 50% from the field. So Syracuse has to do the same. James Sutherland turns on, plays big in that game, and then he goes into his next game, 7 for 11 in that game, I believe. Then the next game against the Pittsburgh Pirates, 7 for 10. This is a guy who's going 6 for 6 from long range, hitting his shots, 12 for 15 from beyond the arc in the first 2 games, as Syracuse avenges their regular season loss to the Pittsburgh Panthers. They move on to face Georgetown in the Big East Final Four, and I said going into the game, I truly believe they could win it. It was just a feeling that I had inside, and they take this victory, and I said if they win this game, then you're going to see a different Syracuse team going into the NCAA tournament. They lose the game. I think the mentality goes back negative. The strides that they made against Seton Hall and Pittsburgh go away. So they end up winning the game. They defeat Georgetown. They do it in overtime, 58-55. They had Georgetown on the ropes, but Georgetown fought back, making shots, and you leave Markel Starks open, and he's going to take advantage, the junior guard from Georgetown. Everybody's keeping their eyes on Otto Porter Jr., but in all honesty, Starks has come up big for that Georgetown team, along with Devontae Smith-Rivera coming off the bench as a guard, a freshman guard, who is going to have a good career for Georgetown if he sticks around. So they get that victory. And I had spoken to Pearl Washington before the game, a Syracuse alum, former guard for Syracuse, who also played in the NBA, and he made the statement to me. He said, forget about the championship for the Big East. He said, this is the championship for Syracuse. And I couldn't agree with him more. Those were my sentiments before we even spoke on the phone. And then to see Syracuse go out there and get that victory over Georgetown, I said, this is going to be a different team now. You're seeing a different team. A team that knew that they didn't have to beat the Louisville Cardinals. And I think that ultimately went into the last 5-10 minutes of the game when the Cardinals came back and Syracuse lost the lead and they went down and they were up by 18 in the first half, and then they end up seeing that full swing and they lose that game in the championship. I don't think that they needed the championship, and I think that they knew that they didn't need the championship. They had already turned themselves around against Georgetown. They had already put themselves in a good place mentally for the NCAA tournament. They were clicking, the chemistry was better, James Sutherland was turning on, the team in general was hitting jump shots from Brandon Trish and Trevor Cooney getting a few and Michael Carter-Williams. The team was making their shots, and that was helping them to relax because a jump shooting team, when you're out there, you have to have elements to your game. You can't simply go inside. And so to hit some threes, to hit some shots inside the arc, the jump shooting helps out Syracuse because, going 17 of 55, 14 of 53, just abysmal performances that they had in their losses in the regular season. So to do what they did in this game that they had, against Louisville, even in a loss, shows that they're making their shots and they were getting more comfortable, and they definitely showed that through the first 3 games of the Big East tournament. And in moving on, James Sutherland and the rest of the team come together for the NCAA tournament, and in the NCAA tournament, they start in San Jose, which makes absolutely no sense. They're in the East bracket, playing in California, but they take down Montana, which I think was a huge win, an emotional victory, a victory that helped separate them, restate that they have talent, restate that they could dominate a team. And I think that win against Montana, that huge win, that 81 points they score in that game. 81 points. 81. Win by 47. Huge game for them, which I think really established the fact that they could play. They knew that they could play, but to win a game like that really helps you get that separation. You allow 34 points, and you do it this late in the season. It's not an early season game against Colgate. It's not a game against Pace that doesn't count. This is a game that does count. You're playing to stay in. Everything in the NCAA tournament, single elimination. So to defeat Montana by 47, to defeat anybody by 47 and really take charge, C.J. Fair going inside, showing nobody's going to stop me, and then Brandon Trish going inside, Michael Carter-Williams going inside. That game really helped give the team some comfort, give the team some relaxation, help them to see that they can really do it. And, to follow Syracuse for as long as I have, to see the team not relax, not say, okay, we're up by 30, we're up by 20, let's see what Montana can do. They didn't play down to the level of the talent that they were playing. They played to their level for 40 straight minutes. They never took their car out of overdrive. And I think that says a lot about this team and a lot about what they wanted to do, because in the next game against California, they did just enough. But I think that Montana game is a boost, just like the Georgetown victory was a huge boost for Syracuse going into the NCAA tournament. I think Montana's game was a boost for Syracuse to really go up against better talent, stronger talent. And when you go up against a team with Justin Cobbs and Austin Crabb and what they had to offer in that game to be the 2 dominant scorers for California. And yes, Syracuse won 66-60, but it's not because of the fact that their defense was bad. It's just the offense didn't really do a whole lot. In the second half, it was a free throw game, and California had put Syracuse on the line 41 times. Syracuse took 43 attempts from the field, and on top of that had 41 free throws. They made more free throws, 27, than they made attempts from the field, which I believe was 18. So Syracuse really relying, even though they missed a bunch of their opportunities at the charity stripe, they're relying on the charity stripe to win the game. Their defense was definitely there and held California in a virtual away game for Syracuse, despite being the 4 seed and California being the 12 seed. You're playing the game in San Jose, California, so a lot of the fans out there are going to be California proud, and Syracuse gets that victory, come back to the East Coast, and as this season would be, it's this storyline of overcoming adversity, of second opportunities, third opportunities, another chance to do it right. Syracuse had that against Pittsburgh in the Big East tournament. They beat them. Same thing against Georgetown. They beat them. Then you have a chance to avenge your 61-39 loss inside the Verizon Center in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. The worst loss you had all season long. Your worst loss in a long, long time for Syracuse. Probably the worst loss under Jim Boeheim as far as points scored. And you go back into the Verizon Center, and you have the top-seeded Indiana Hoosiers going up against you. This team who spent more weeks, 9, at number 1 in the rankings than any other team in Division I men's basketball. 349 teams. Nobody was at the top longer than Indiana. Indiana getting wins over Michigan. Indiana going out there and pushing talented teams in the Big Ten. When you look at Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and really the Big Ten boosting their talent, boosting their output, as a conference this season, so you have to respect Indiana. And then they have Cody Zeller, the 7-footer inside, who has footwork, who can hit jump shots, who can hit shots inside the arc, and who can make free throws. So now you have to take care of this guy. Well, Jared Sullinger last season, by Keita, couldn't take care of him. Raheem Christmas couldn't take care of him. This time around, Syracuse puts the 2-3 zone on. Credit to Keita and Christmas, who condensed the scoring of Cody Zeller, who condensed the scoring of the team in general. 61-50 win over Indiana, who was flustered from the moment that the game started in the Verizon Center. Did not know what to do with the ball. Syracuse proud. There were more Syracuse fans there than any fans of Indiana or Marquette, Miami fans of the other game that was played in the East Regional for the Sweet 16. Syracuse defense really being the story of this game. You know, Brandon Trish got out in transition. Michael Carter-Williams did some good work at transition. They both had the height advantage over Indiana's guards. But once again, the defense, you cannot say enough about it. The 2-3 zone playing better than really I think I've ever seen them play in my lifetime. And then on top of that, you go up against Marquette, another adversity game, another game to overcome a past blunder. And they do exactly that. Ironically, holding Marquette to 39 points, the same showing that they had in the Verizon Center earlier in the month. Not even 4 weeks ago, and holding Marquette to 39 points. And in my mind, a very good coach in Buzz Williams, a guy who does his homework, who studies, who gets out there and really pushes his team. He's always in games. In the second half, you can never count them out, whether they're up 20, up 2, down 15. But in this game, Syracuse really changed that for the Marquette Golden Eagles, which is something that I haven't seen any other team do to Marquette. Marquette always fighting, always staying in it. They won their first 2 games of this year's NCAA tournament by a combined 3 points. So, you know, there's a lot to say about this defense that holds Marquette to 39 after Marquette had 74 against them. And they had James Sutherland last time. So it's not the fact that Sutherland just went off. Syracuse's offense did enough. They scored 55 points. Yeah, they had their moments of struggle. They went on long droughts without scoring from the field. They took a long time before they got anything in the basket besides a free throw in the second half. But the defense showed up once again, which put Syracuse into the Final Four, where I sit right now in Atlanta, Georgia, on the verge of their trip to the Final Four, their first trip here in a decade. 2003 was the last time it happened, and they won the national championship. This time around, 2013, they're in Atlanta, not New Orleans, but they are down south, and they're playing up against a different team in the Michigan Wolverines, a team that has not been good really since I was a child, since I was in elementary school, when you had the likes of the Fab Five on the team. Really not a lot to say about Michigan in recent years, has not shown up. A team that's, you know, not only not going to the Final Four, but not even getting into the NCAA tournament at times. And now you see what this team has been able to do under John Beilein, who I have a lot of respect for because, you know, growing up at Syracuse, he came from upstate New York coaching Canisius, coaching Lemoyne, not even in Division I ranks, and then rising to Division I and coaching teams like Richmond, coaching West Virginia, and getting this Michigan job and really turning this Michigan team around. There's a lot to say about this guy. I mean, obviously, he's got a ton of shooters on this team with Nick Stauskas, who I saw practice here in the open practice of the Final Four, who was draining threes 1, 2, 3, 4, just hitting them one after the other. Trey Burke, who hit a huge 3 from probably your living room. And if you're, you know, for those of you that are watching that are in Atlanta or in Syracuse or in California, no matter whose room I'm talking about, whose living room I'm speaking of, he hit the shot from there. He hit the shot from your living room. Whether it's 30 miles away, 2 miles away, 1,000 miles away, he was shooting that shot against Kansas, just throwing up a prayer, and it trickled into the net. 23 points between the second half and overtime after not scoring a point in the first half. 9 of 17, leadership when you need it. And then you have Tim Hardaway Jr., who definitely has good genes coming from his father. Saw him drain threes in his Final Four practice. And then you have a guy like Mitch McGary, who you talk about, a guy who's 6'10", who can handle the ball, who could pass the ball. And one thing that I saw him do in the Final Four practice, he throws the ball up in the air. Probably, let's say like 18, 20 feet in the air. Just throws the ball right up in the air and catches it behind his back. What big man? Think about George Murison, Sean Bradley, Fab Mello, Billy Seelick, for goodness sakes, trying to catch a ball behind their back with that height. Hand-eye coordination is there for the big man, which you usually don't see. They usually just catch it, dunk it, catch it, layup. This guy can shoot. He was making his free throws, making his jump shots. This is a guy who is very, very dangerous. Whenever a big man can shoot, there's a lot of danger. Dirk Nowitzki, Dallas Mavericks, hello. They have to have an inside presence, as Dirk figured out, in order to get to a national championship. You know, any hopes of winning a national championship on the NBA level. But it's the same collegiately. Mitch McGary has to be strong inside, which I think he is. And, you know, he makes shots. When you have a big man that you have to guard at the free throw line, behind, you know, beyond the arc but close to the arc, inside, in the paint, going to the rim, just outside of the paint, wherever he may be, if you have to guard a big man 10 to 15 feet away, it's going to make the game difficult, especially when you have Stauskas around shooting. You have Glenn Robinson III who can shoot. You have Tim Hardaway Jr. who can shoot. You have Trey Burke who can shoot. This, hands down to me, is the best offense that Syracuse has faced all season long. And I'm including Louisville. I'm including these teams that have stepped it up. Michigan has performers, and they can score. Michigan offense, 79 points, 83 points, 80, you know, whatever it may be, 70s, 80s. Syracuse has been scoring in the 60s, 50s. They're going to have to push it in this game. They're going to have to get to 70 if they hope to win this game. I think that, you know, working in Syracuse's favor is that the Big Ten really not prepared for the 2-3 zone. They haven't seen it. You can't simulate it in practice. Indiana showed that, the fact that you can't simulate it. But John Beilein, being around Boeheim, coaching against Boeheim, learning about Boeheim, and just being, you know, a teacher of the game in and of itself, that causes some trouble because he's already seen the zone. On top of that, Mitch McGary. Syracuse has not seen any center like Mitch McGary this season. Cody Zeller, the thought was that he might be, but in all honesty, from what I've seen from Mitch McGary and what I know, this is a guy, and what I hear too, this is a guy who's really going to bring more than anybody else has brought. And Syracuse having to guard 4 guys around the perimeter, that's unheard of. You know, Villanova has their moments. Notre Dame has their moments. Pittsburgh has their moments. Georgetown has their moments. But, I mean, you see with Smith Rivera, Otto Porter Jr., and Starks of Georgetown, Syracuse was flustered, you know, when they played them in Georgetown to go up against them and have to figure it out. So is it going to be the Syracuse team that faced Georgetown in the beginning of March or toward the end of March that's really going to show you in this game if this defense is prepared? I think one thing working in Syracuse's favor is their comfort level. When I saw them practice in the open practice here in Atlanta, Georgia, inside the Georgia Dome, they look very, very comfortable. They look relaxed. They're laughing. They're smiling. They're having fun. The coaches are having fun. I think that this is a team that is they're relaxed. They're poised. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't take relax and lax or lazy and put those together. This is a team who is scary relaxed. I said the same thing about Louisville with Rick Pitino. When I saw Rick and had the first opportunity in my life to talk with Rick Pitino when I went to the Big East Media Day for men's basketball down at the New York Athletic Club in New York City, I said the scariest thing about Rick Pitino is that this late in his career, he is comfortable. He was relaxed, answering any question you had, not being rude, very relaxed, very calm. That's dangerous. When a coach with his capability and his talent is relaxed at this point in his career, it makes a team dangerous. I think the same thing about Syracuse right now. Michigan didn't seem as relaxed, not smiling as much. Guys arguing, guys being confused with each other. Not a lot of camaraderie on the court in that Final Four open practice. And I was right on the court to hear the guys, see the guys, be right behind the guys. So I really saw a comfortable Syracuse team. I think that works in their favor. I think the fact that James Sutherland and Brandon Trish more than know that every single game could be their last ever playing on a court when it comes to, you know, maybe they don't play professionally, maybe they do, but maybe they have to go overseas. this could be, no matter what game they go into, the last Syracuse game that they ever play. And the last game that they ever play, maybe at all, in general, when it comes to basketball. So you see the fight in them. You see the hunger in them. You see James Sutherland's not just a pure shooter. He's passing the ball. He's getting steals. He's getting rebounds, offensively and defensively, more on the defensive end. His length is huge. 6'8" on the defense, willing to put his arms out, willing to go after a steal, willing to go after a block, which he's averaging during each game, getting out there and getting a block, getting a steal. Putting himself out there to get 1-and-1 or close to that. Or if he's not going to get a steal in this game, to get a block in this game. When you look at their 8 postseason games, there's steals there in the majority of the games. There's blocks in the majority of the games. And at the same time, defensive rebounds, heavy in all of those games. Heavy defensive rebounds. 9 rebounds, 7 of them on the defensive end. If there's 5 rebounds, 3 of them on the defensive end. He's getting offensive rebounds, but he's getting more defensively, putting his hand in to get steals, open up transition, showing that he's got a better handle on the ball. I think the best thing that happened in the Syracuse team when talking about James Sutherland is that he decided to not just shoot threes. And that's really come up big for them. I think Michael Carter-Williams, that he's knowing more now in his youthful stage, and I know everybody's talking about the NBA, and there's no chance he's staying. He should stay. Whether or not he does, he should stay, because he's still learning. He went from the 4th-string point guard off the bench to being the starting point guard and have to be out there for almost all 40 minutes of the game. So there's a lot to learn there. I think he's finally seeing how to have a healthy balance. He's making better decisions when to shoot, when to pass. He's not forcing his passes. He's not forcing his shots. Brandon Trish, mentally staying in it. Yeah, he gets pissed off. He gets mad at himself when he misses a shot, but he's still taking them. He's still going after them, and he knows his role. Hey, some nights I'm going to make them. Some nights I'm not, but that's okay because we have James. And CJ Fair, I cannot say enough about, the most consistent guy offensively and defensively for Syracuse all season, which makes sense why he's a leading scorer with a little bit over 14 points a game, leading rebounder with a little bit over 7 a game. He gets a steal a game. He gets a block a game. His turnover's not that bad, somewhere around 2, under 2. CJ Fair has really come up huge for Syracuse. Lose, win, or draw. He's the only guy in the aircraft carrier that could hit a jump shot between Syracuse and San Diego State. So this is a guy that really has, you're talking last season. I know a lot of people brought up last season about his jump shot and how he's working on it. And some days he looked good and some days he looked bad. CJ Fair has his jump shot now. You put him out there, he's going to take a good shot no matter what it is. Whether he makes the 3 or misses the 3. Gets the inside shot, doesn't get the inside shot. Gets the fadeaway, doesn't get the fadeaway. It's going to be a good shot. Very rarely are you ever going to see him airball a shot or not hit the rim or roll around the rim or get to the backboard. CJ Fair is a very, very strong shooter. He's a tenacious player. He knows how to command the foul better than anybody. When he gets that offensive rebound, he's like, okay, you know what? Come defend me. I'm going to go back up. I'm going to try and make the shot. And if I miss it, I'm going to make sure that you foul me. CJ Fair is a very smart guy who could get better at the line, but definitely basketball IQ-wise, probably the smartest on Syracuse's team. By Keita, I can't say enough about. The man's making free throws. There's games where he made more free throws than Brandon Trish, more free throws than Michael Carter-Williams. This is a guy who attacks the basket, has better hands, gets a cut on his forehead, has his hand taped up, and is still going up against Indiana, still getting to the free throw line, still getting putbacks, still going after dunks, still going after layups. By Keita, outside of taking a jump shot or taking a 3, is really turned into a good option for Syracuse, and for the most part making smart fouls. Raheem Christmas is not playing 50% basketball anymore. He's playing 100% basketball, 110% basketball at times. That's been huge for Syracuse. This was a guy that was getting blocks in the beginning of the season, and then he just kind of lagged off, just went away. And I look at some pictures that were taken of games where Michael Carter-Williams is fighting for the ball. He's got 2 hands on the ball against the opponent. And Raheem Christmas is on the other side, 1 hand on the ball, the other hand cocked back. And I thought that was a great picture, a great illustration of who Raheem Christmas has been playing like. A half their guy. 50% guy. It's not that he doesn't have talent. It's not that he's not capable. He would just not play up to his talent. He wouldn't do enough. And even Jim Boeheim admitted the fact that they needed more from Raheem Christmas toward the end of the season, that Rock was not doing enough, that he wasn't giving 100%, and that you might not see him give his full potential until 2 years after he's out of college. And now Rock has turned on. He looks like he wants it more. He can dunk the ball. He can go after it. But, I've talked with Rob Drummond, Syracuse University football alum before, and also an NFL alum, CFL alum, and I talked to Rob about, wanting it. You could be a really good athlete, but you don't go after it. If you could dunk on somebody, you could get a rebound. Some of these guys, as crazy as it may seem for those of you watching and listening to me right now, and think about, hey, if I had a chance to get on the court for Syracuse or for any team, I'd give it my all because I'd appreciate the opportunity. Well, some players, man, woman, or child, they go out there and you can score, you can dunk, you can hit the shot, you could get the block, you could get the steal, you could get the rebound, and they don't give as much effort, and it's crazy. It's crazy to me to say that, but, you see that from Raheem Christmas. Maybe it comes easy for him and he thinks, I don't have to do that much. But I was told when he was being recruited, watch out for Raheem Christmas because his highlight reel looks great, but if you see him playing a game, he very rarely gives a full 40 minutes. And, for Raheem, he doesn't have to give 40 minutes, but he has to give a substantial amount of time, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and he's really shown up. And I give him a lot of credit for that because Syracuse cannot win the game against Michigan without him. And I've already talked about Michigan and their shooters. Defensively, it'll be interesting because Syracuse went up against man with Montana, won. Man with California, won. Man with Indiana, won. Marquette had man and a zone, won that game. Syracuse plays well against man. They like playing man-to-man. They like going up against that. So I think that's an advantage for them. But, Michigan's a team that likes to get out in transition. They're quick. They're fast. They can hit big shots. They could do it, in a short amount of time with 2 minutes to go, down by 10 to Kansas, and end up forcing overtime and winning in overtime says a lot about a team. So Syracuse has to condense the offense of Michigan, has to keep them from getting out in transition, keep them from getting steals, slow them down, and take advantage of the fact that they're playing against man-to-man and go after it and pass the ball. Moving the ball has been huge for Syracuse. Not forcing a shot, not deciding who's going to take the shot, remembering that C.J. Fair's on the floor and he's your best shooter. Those are important things to have. Syracuse has a lot of talent, which was capable of getting here, but until that talent moved the ball, got in the 2-3 zone, played up against teams, played hard, played strong, mentally were there, put their hands up, went after blocks, went after steals, didn't allow easy buckets, got out in transition, made their jump shots. Until that team came on, there was no talk about that team going to Atlanta. Now they're here, and where they go from here is truly up to them in how they play their game against Michigan. Michigan's going to give it all they have, and Syracuse is going to have to do the same if they hope to come out alive and head to the national championship. This is Dan Tortora reporting to you from down in Atlanta, Georgia, en route to the national championship, which is going to be going on very, very soon. This is my Final Four reporting exclusively on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, part of Dan Tortora Broadcast Media. A special thanks to Carvel DeWitt, where you can get your very own Wake Up Call Sunday. And you could get soft serve, chocolate or vanilla, or a twist. And you can get Carvel Light now, so you can actually have my Sunday and save some calories for yourself. Put caramel and cookie dough on top with whipped cream and a cherry, folks, and enjoy that on East Genesee Street. I also want to thank Carrie and Daily Physical Therapy for making this possible, for making the show possible, and making my ability to walk around the Georgia Dome and all the area here down in Atlanta because they've helped me with my knee. They can get you on your path to hope if you call them during normal business hours, Monday through Friday, 315-652-4323. A bunch of locations, 5 different locations in upstate New York. You now have a place to go to help you. And if you trust my voice and you trust what I have to say, trust me that they can help you. I waited 2 years to start feeling better, and I am. Thank God, and thanks to Carrie and Daily Physical Therapy. I also want to thank Dry Sig Apparel, who has brought you the Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora hat. the Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora women's line and men's line of t-shirt, and so much more. Thank you to everything that Drystick Apparel does, to creating a football jersey for me, to creating personalized jerseys to give away to you like we did in last year's bracket challenge. So Drystick Apparel, for all that you do, right in Syracuse, New York. You could go to the big name brands, or you could go to the brand that's going to have a big name nationally, folks. Go to the local brand with a national flavor. You want quality, you're not getting rid of quality by going to Drystick Apparel. You're going to someone in your backyard of upstate New York and showing love for them, who are going to give you the best of the best. And they work outside of the state too, and they work outside of the country. So no matter where you are, Drystick Apparel is what you need to clothe your company, your team, yourself with. And a special thanks to fanhands.com. I'll be giving away a bunch of fan hands here at the Georgia Dome, so make sure you look out for me if you're going to be at the Georgia Dome. Get your pair of fan hands from me and get loud, get proud, and cheer on your team, folks. Make sure you do that. Fanhands.com, providing me with plenty of fan hands for the ultimate fan experience. To get yours, it costs $10, folks. There's 12 different colors. Go to fanhands.com, find your color, and get it. Cheer on your team wherever, whenever, however, whomever. Do it with fan hands. And by going to the fan corner page of wakeupcalldt.com, you can order your pair of fan hands with the simple instructions right there on the fan corner page to also donate part of your purchase to go to those victims of Hurricane Sandy. So I thank fanhands.com, and I implore you to help the victims of Hurricane Sandy through fan hands and through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, with hands to answer the call. All the information is on the fan corner page of wakeupcalldt.com. Once again, Dan Tortora down in Atlanta with you right now and always to bring you the best in Syracuse coverage and coverage of teams around the country and around the world when it comes to any sport, anytime. Come here to wakeupcalldt.com and get your fix. For now, about Syracuse and the Michigan Wolverines right here for the Final Four matchup. This is Dan Tortora on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, your home where sports meets life, part of the Dan Tortora broadcast media family. I'll talk to you after the game. God bless, enjoy the games, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.